A crew that disagreed when agreement was survival. Disagreement is normal. In space, it can be dangerous. This mission didn't fail because of technology. It didn't fail because of environment. It almost failed because the people on board did not see the situation the same way. The threat did not come from outside the spacecraft. It came from inside, from the space between perspectives that could not be resolved fast enough. To understand why this moment still matters today, we need to understand how fragile consensus becomes under pressure. Spaceflight is built on teamwork, shared judgment, and trust. Every mission depends on the assumption that the crew will function as a unit, that individual perspectives will converge into collective action when it matters most. But stress has a way of pulling even the closest crews apart. Pressure does not create disagreement. It reveals the disagreements that were always present but invisible under normal conditions. The crew had trained together for years. Simulations, emergencies, countless scenarios where coordination was flawless. They trusted one another completely. That trust had been tested and confirmed in every simulated crisis, every practice contingency, every debrief where roles were reviewed and responsibilities affirmed. They had developed a shorthand and mutual awareness that marks a team operating at its highest level. Until one situation broke that rhythm. A decision point appeared, subtle at first, a technical interpretation that allowed more than one conclusion. Data was clear, but meaning was not. The instruments presented information that could be read in more than one way, and each reading implied a different course of action. The ambiguity was not in the data itself, but in what the data demanded of the crew. One crew member saw caution. The data suggested a developing condition that warranted slowing down, reevaluating, and preserving options until more information was available. Another saw a delay. The same data, viewed through a different lens, suggested that pausing now would waste a critical window of opportunity and introduce risks of its own. Another saw unnecessary risk. The proposed actions, in their view, introduced variables that the mission was not designed to absorb. None of them were wrong. That was the problem. Each interpretation was supported by the data. Each was consistent with training. Each was motivated by genuine concern for mission safety. The disagreement was not between competence and incompetence, or between caution and recklessness. It was between three valid readings of an ambiguous situation, offered by three experienced professionals who each believed their assessment was the one most likely to protect the crew. Because in space, hesitation can be just as dangerous as a bad choice, and survival does not wait for consensus. The disagreement stayed professional at first. Calm voices, technical language, each position justified by data. The crew communicated with a discipline that years of training had instilled. Terminology was precise. Arguments were structured. Evidence was cited. But pressure changes tone. As time passed, the crew felt the weight of consequence. Waiting preserved unity, but risk grew quietly. Acting fractured agreement, but reduced uncertainty. The longer the discussion continued, the more the situation evolved around them. The data that had prompted the disagreement was not static. It was changing with each passing minute, and the window within which any of the proposed actions would be effective was narrowing. The commander listened carefully, not just to words, but to confidence, to hesitation, to what was said and what wasn't. Leadership in a crew disagreement is not about having the right answer. It is about reading the room accurately enough to make a decision that the team can execute even if not everyone agrees with its premise. The commander observed the dynamics forming between the crew members, the subtle shifts in body language, the slight changes in vocal tone that indicate frustration, conviction, or uncertainty. This was the hidden challenge. Managing people while managing systems. Balancing authority with trust. The commander had to navigate between asserting a decision and preserving the crew's willingness to function as a unit afterward. A decision imposed without consideration will resolve the immediate problem, but damage the trust needed for every challenge that followed. A decision delayed to accommodate all perspectives would preserve harmony, but allow the situation to deteriorate. Spaceflight culture encourages speaking up. Every crew member is trained to voice concerns, to challenge assumptions, to present alternative views. That culture exists because silence in the face of danger has caused disasters. But the same culture that encourages speaking up also requires decisions, and decisions demand leadership. The tension between open communication and decisive action is one of the deepest challenges in crew dynamics, and it becomes acute when time is limited and stakes are high. The crew had to resolve the conflict before the situation forced an answer, and the clock was moving. The tension reached its peak in silence. No one raised their voice. No one backed down either. The professionalism held, but beneath it was the unmistakable strain of intelligent people arriving at different conclusions from identical information. Each crew member had invested their analysis with personal judgment, and stepping back from that judgment felt like abandoning their contribution to the crew's safety. Each crew member understood the stakes. Acting too soon could create new problems. Waiting too long could remove options entirely. The situation had become a test not of technical knowledge, but of interpersonal trust, of the crew's ability to subordinate individual certainty to collective action. This was the emotional edge of the mission, not fear, but friction. The strain of knowing that everyone wanted the same outcome, but saw different paths toward it. The crew shared a single goal: survival and mission success. The disagreement was not about the destination. It was about the route. And in space, the route matters as much as the destination, because some routes consume resources that other routes preserve. The commander made the decision, not by overruling, but by reframing. The question shifted from who was right to what preserves survival across the most scenarios. Safety margins replaced personal preference. Long-term consequence replaced short-term efficiency. The commander did not declare one crew member correct and the others wrong. Instead, the commander recast the problem in terms that transcended the individual positions, asking not which interpretation was most accurate, but which response would leave the crew best positioned regardless of which interpretation turned out to be true. The crew aligned, not because everyone agreed, but because everyone understood. The reframing gave each crew member a way to support the decision without abandoning their analysis. The action chosen incorporated elements of each perspective, prioritizing margin preservation in a way that addressed the concerns raised by all three positions. It was not a perfect solution. It was a survivable one. Action followed immediately. Systems adjusted. The situation stabilized. The crew executed the chosen course with the coordination that their training had built, setting aside the disagreement in favor of unified performance. The professionalism that had sustained the discussion now sustained the execution. The disagreement ended, but its lesson remained. Unity in space is not about shared opinion. It is about shared commitment when opinions differ. After the mission, the disagreement was barely mentioned in official summaries. No failure occurred. No emergency was declared. From the outside, nothing remarkable had happened. The mission data showed a smooth operational sequence with no significant deviations. Inside the crew, everything had, that moment, redefined trust, not as agreement, but as commitment to a shared outcome even when perspectives clash. The crew learned that harmony is not the absence of conflict. It is the ability to move forward despite it. True trust does not require unanimity. It requires the confidence that every crew member will execute the chosen plan fully, even if they would have chosen differently. This story matters because future missions will be longer, farther, and more isolating. Crews will face decisions where data allows multiple interpretations and time refuses to wait. Communication delays will prevent ground control from mediating disagreements in real time. The crew will be alone with their differences, and the ability to resolve those differences quickly will determine whether the mission continues or collapses. Survival will depend not on unanimity, but on leadership that listens, reframes, and decides. On crews that can disagree with passion and then execute with unity. On the understanding that conflict is not a failure of teamwork, but a feature of it, a sign that the crew is engaged, thinking critically, and contributing their full capability to the mission. Disagreement did not threaten the mission. Indecision did, and the crew proved something essential. When agreement is survival, the goal is not to be right. It is to stay together. Subscribe to join the journey. A crew